r/AskReddit. What was the dumbest thing you thought as a child? Own 2 credit cards and use them to pay for each other for infinite money. My uncle is a priest for an obscure Hindu offshoot religion, and he told me quite young that I shouldn't play sport because each person only gets a set number of breaths in their life, and getting out of breath use them up quicker. I used to spend hours laying in bed trying to make my breaths as long and slow as possible. In fairness, I actually have a decent lung capacity as an adult, so maybe it had a positive effect. That my head was a rock. I thought if you left a video game on then a character would come out of the TV and kill you. I was a bit paranoid as a small kid. Building on that paranoia, I thought those for sale by owner and the existence of just for sale signs implied that many houses were for sale not by owner. I thought sometimes a random person came to your house and put it up for sale without your consent. Little did I know I had discovered the concept of foreclosure. I grew up around the time of the release of the Star Wars prequels. I vividly remember asking my brother as to why they released the sequels, New Hope etc. before they released The Phantom Menace, as it made no sense when I was 11 and a prequel was a wild new concept to me. He had me convinced, embarrassingly until I was about 15 over 16, that the reason they released the sequels first was because there was a fire at the studio and it burned all the original tapes, so they had to reshoot them. I was so dense. The inside of my stomach was another village with their own villagers. Every time I drank, it rained. Every time I ate, it fed the people. A tummy ache was because the villagers were unhappy. When you have a baby you have to push one of your testicles out, and it became the baby egg. I had no idea how I was my parents' 3rd child. I was my dad's 3rd testicle. I remember watching the movie Cocoon with my grandparents. I could not have been more than 4. For some reason I deduced that, in order to become adults, children had to die in these pool cocoons and be reborn old. I freaked my cousins out and had a whole group of kids crying at a holiday party over our impending doom. Ruined Christmas pictures that year. I used to believe that night is brought about by clouds, dark ones. Of course, never felt the need to clarify this with anybody. It was an obvious fact. I thought the Christ on the crucifix at my elementary school was a cool man reclining on a hypermodern, minimalist space vessel. Took him from the wall during break and made him soar through the room, dramatizing his mad flight with epic lip-generated engine sounds. Just when I staged his collision with a sandwich, the teacher came in. Bortagen. That the local mosque in my city was Aladdin's vacation home. That beyond my country was nothing. I believed that the map of the earth that we knew was only half of the earth, and the other side of the earth was some dark and mysterious place that was constantly in nighttime, and that no human had ever been. I once told my mom I wondered what was on the other side of the world, and she was like, what? My parents gave me a book about the birds and the bees that was illustrated. They showed a couple in bed in the missionary position. In that same book, there was a picture of Manus erect, which was shown as parallel to the floor as he stood. The book didn't explain that the is somewhat flexible. There was a diagram of the and uterus but no picture showing the naked woman. I didn't have any sisters and my parents weren't the kind of parents that walked around naked or semi-naked, clothed at all times. For the longest time I thought I was deformed. My was between my legs when those pictures made it look like it should be on my stomach. I was horrified and I would scream if anyone opened the bathroom/bedroom door while I was changing or using the bathroom, because my deformity would be discovered. Edited because perpendicular and parallel are different. Editing because I'm astonished by how many of us thought our bodies weren't normal. Giant group hug. We real okay now. That if you poked your belly button too hard then it would come open like a plug and all of your internal organs would spill out. If a man kisses a woman for a long time the woman is pregnant. That the world actually used to be black and white, like it was in old movies. And even ask my mom what it felt like when all the colors suddenly appeared. That if April was a month, Ninja Turtles must also be a month. I used to think adults were in full control and knew exactly what they were doing. I was vaguely aware of a TV show called Ironsides. about a lawyer in a wheelchair. Whenever I heard the word paralegal, I thought it meant a paraplegic lawyer. It made sense to me that people in wheelchairs could make excellent lawyers, based on the nature of the job and their physical limitations. I thought paralegals were lawyers who'd parachute to the scene of a crime, so people would have their story straight before the cops showed up, like paratroopers. Not something I believed, but a harmless prank I used to play on my kids. There is a highway we use that has several long, gentle curves over a 5 to 6 mile stretch. One day when my younger son complained that the sun was in his eyes, he was about 3 at the time, I had the idea to pretend that I had a personal relationship with Mr. Sun. I saw that the highway was going to curve, so I had a conversation with Mr. Sun explaining the situation and asking him to please move over so that he wasn't shining in my son's eyes. I drew out the conversation and timed it so just when Mr. Sun agreed, we would start the curve, and it looked like he was moving over and out of my son's eyes. Then after another curve, the sun would be in my other son's eyes. So I asked politely for Mr. Sun to move again, just as we went around the next curve. This went on for almost a year before my wife explained to them what was going on. It was hilarious in the meantime. Edit, a word. I used to believe that people that spoke other languages translated their language to mine in their head. People that died in movies really died. Edit, wow, thanks for the silver award. I'm glad to see I'm not the only one that thought this. I was watching a movie with my dad wherein the main character had his arm cut off. I turned to my dad and asked, that's fake, right? And my dad, very sincerely, said no, that actor's getting paid a lot of money to have his arm cut off. And all the color drained from my face and I said, oh, okay. I was in my early 20s when I had that aha moment where I realized he was messing with me. Bortagen. That if people are going to study something they just sit in a circle with other students and think about what they want to do. As soon as they find out, they are done and they can leave. I wish lol. This is a wild ride. Folks, when I was a little girl, my grandpa told our family this story that he used to call the chocolate head. He told us that he was born with a head encased in chocolate, and the doctors and nurses had to eat it off. Despite already being eaten, the reconstructed chocolate head floated back to him when he was a toddler, telling him, remember me, I'm the chocolate head. I remember looking all throughout my grandpa's house to seek out this floating, talking replica of my grandpa's head made out of chocolate. Now, my grandpa is on so many medication, he actually might believe his own story. That sperm were the size of your fist squeezed their way out of your while you were sleeping. If a girl was in the bed with you and wiggled their way up inside her to conceive the baby. This was based on Facts of Life pop-up book, where the sperm were that size. Really terrible reading skills, and parents who wouldn't directly answer my questions just gave me the book. So I figured they were to scale. If babies forced their way out of women at the end during birth, which TV had taught me, I figured maybe nature was balancing the scales by having one of those sperm tennis balls squeeze its way out of the man to begin the process. I knew babies came about by sleeping with each other. I just didn't know how sleeping could do it, and I filled in the gaps. That babies were inside their mom's literal belly. If she swallowed a cherry tomato whole, I thought it would land and bounce on the baby's head. If you turn on the light in the car, you lines get arrested or might die. I thought that highways functioned like airport moving walkways. That the Underground Railroad was a literal secret underground subway style steam engine that Harriet Tubman was the conductor of. I felt terrible as a kid to eat. I wouldn't eat in front of people, and every meal I would find myself thinking poor food getting eaten because I was convinced they had emotions. Lived in Germany for a few years. My dad convinced me that windshield wipers were called Flippenmarkenspreaders. This was pre-Google Translate. Bortagen. I thought that there would be a baby inside every girl's stomach as soon as she is born, and inside that baby's stomach too there would be a tiny baby. The cycle goes on, and that the baby keeps growing as we grow, and after getting married the doctors will cut the stomach and take the baby out. to make space for another baby. Grandparents were assigned to families. Like, I didn't know my grandma was my dad's mom. I used to think my mom was such a good shopper. She would pick out all these groceries, and when she got up to the checker, she would only give them one piece of money, and they would give her several pieces of money back, and we got to keep the groceries. I thought babies came out of women's buttholes. Thank you for watching this video. Leave a thumbs up, comment your own stories, and don't forget to subscribe for new videos daily.